So, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of PC Quest Tech Talk. This time we have with us Ajay Patel, SVP GM, Modern Application Platform Business, VMware. Welcome to the show, Ajay.
Thank you, Sunil. Great to be here.
Yeah, so I believe your now VMware world is going on. So there's a lot of buzz around it. So I'll ask questions around the cloud, and maybe you can tell us what's happening there also.
For sure.
Yeah.
Would you like me to get started?
Okay. Yeah. So the first question I'd like to ask is, of course, after the COVID crisis happened, there has been a great acceleration of cloud adoption. And also, like, now everybody's saying it's not a question of, if, it's a question of when. Now everybody has to come onto the cloud. And when we talk of the cloud, the buzzword is the multi-cloud. I mean, it's going to be a multi-cloud world. So I'd like to just know how both the enterprises and SMEs have taken to this brave new multi-cloud world.
Yeah, so I think, as you called it, COVID has accelerated what used to be, weeks and months of planning to have to respond to business imperatives in a matter of days. Whether it's getting all the employees onboarded in a digital workplace or getting some critical systems moved to a digital. So what we've seen in many examples, and in the US at least where I live, we had cases where whether it's Best Buy trying to automate pickup, or you have a company like Pfizer who has to dispense some of our COVID funds for the small businesses. These were all done in a matter of 2 weeks, within a month. So that acceleration, which was unimaginable, if you will, before COVID, the business crisis forced everybody to react, and they started to leverage the cloud. And that urgency is not going to stop anytime. So every company is becoming a digital business. A statistic that I read yesterday was there'll be 500 million new applications that will be created in the next 4 years. That's more than all the applications we created in the last 40 years. And that's a sign that every business is starting to become a digital business and is starting to leverage the cloud. Now, as they're doing that, they're using different clouds for the best workloads. So in case for some of the AI, ML workloads for the e-commerce, they may be using Google Cloud, or they may be using for the e-commerce platform an Amazon Cloud, or they may be using some SaaS services for productivity applications if you're a Microsoft customer, for Azure or Zoom as an example of SaaS. So we're now in this world where it's going to be using a set of applications that are running on different clouds. And by definition, you are sitting on more than one cloud. So it's usually VMware as the on-prem plus one or more clouds. And the statistics show that at least most organizations, or more than 60% of the other organizations are using more than 2 clouds. And 30 to 40% are using at least 3 public clouds. So this trend is here to stay, and we have to now deal with this complexity of operating in a multi-cloud world.
I think that's been one of the positives of the COVID crisis. I mean, technological acceleration, complete digital transformation. And yeah, I think we are here. The cloud world is here to stay now. So in this fastest changing tech world, a lot of new tools and new techniques and all are coming up. So can you speak to us about one such, the importance of modern application development?
So let's touch on modern application development. What does it really mean, right? Modern application developments are built around this idea of microservices. We often call them cloud native applications. And some of the core technology that's part of these microservices or of these cloud native applications is built around this idea of containers. Containers makes it easy to package applications and simplify the development cycle. And along with the same words of cloud native and microservices, you often hear the word DevOps. How you bring development operations together. And in this world, you're continuously operating where you're putting new functionality out in an agile manner. So as you think about this world of modern application development around containers, and a core technology called Kubernetes allowing you to orchestrate these many containers that make up your app. You now have a world where you're composing with a whole bunch of open source content, your own business logic, APIs and services, and you're trying to deliver this across a whole bunch of endpoints that are running on multiple clouds. So the complexity, if you can imagine, is tons of containers running at scale in a highly distributed world. So one of the big key trends we see is distributed computing at scale is here to stay. Containers have become the default by which you package up application functionality and put them in production. To orchestrate these applications, Kubernetes has become the default by which you orchestrate them. And you're starting to leverage the cloud of your choice using the public cloud service that makes sense, whether it's an analytical service or a business service company here in the US has done really well is Twilio. You no longer have to understand all the communication stuff. You just call an API to get a message sent out using a communication API. So we're moving to a world where you can compose things very dynamically using a set of services, using these new modern approaches. And so modern applications is often synonymously used with this idea of moving to the cloud. So when I move to the cloud, I'm building these new digital experiences using containers, Kubernetes as a default. But you're also using a whole bunch of tools and technology to get things in production. That's what some of the complexity is. So even though modern apps is exciting, it's powerful, it's also bringing a lot of complexity for developers. And that's one of the things we talked about, right? Kubernetes is not easy. It is not an application platform. There's a gap for developers in terms of being able to understand and use these technologies and get things in production.
So I know containerization and DevOps and agility, these are like the terms which we have been hearing for years, and they are being applied on a much greater scale. So you talked a lot about that. So you talked about Kubernetes. I'd like to hear more about Kubernetes. I mean, what are the advantages and why should enterprises adopt Kubernetes? And again, what is the difference between the way Kubernetes is adopted by small and large organizations and all over the world? Is there any difference?
Yeah, so I think let's look at what's the beauty of Kubernetes. Kubernetes is one of those, and if you listen to Joe Beda and Craig McCluskey, who are part of my team, and they're founders of Kubernetes, they were at Google when they founded Kubernetes. Kubernetes was originally built on a simple approach of saying, how do I make it easy to orchestrate all these containers? Because a typical modern application is composed of many containers and many services. To be able to manage them collectively and orchestrate them was a big problem. So it started as a core orchestration technology, but what's emerged now is really a platform for building additional higher level applications and platforms. So you can now package up any capability as a Kubernetes resource and orchestrate that. So on one end, it is making it possible to build highly distributed scale applications using this technology called Kubernetes. On the other hand, it's driving incredible efficiency because you can now spin up and leverage the vast resources of cloud in a dynamic manner. So if you want to spin up an application to scale up for your peak shopping event, you can spin that up using Kubernetes by orchestrating and spinning up more containers on the fly. And I'll get a little bit technical here. It's built around this idea around intent-driven as well as a reconciler pattern, meaning it tries to, you decide the state you want it to be in, and the system tries to get to that state. So if you need X capacity and you set some SLAs, it automatically spins up more containers to get you the desired state. So the model of desired state is a critical architectural pattern in Kubernetes. So Kubernetes makes it easy to move towards what we call a very declarative system, where you can start to describe the behavior you need of the application. And the system automatically gives you the resource it needs and spins up containers or spins them down to meet the performance of your application. So what you're going to see, the benefits typically are developer productivity, resource efficiency, meaning able to spin workloads up and down, being able to get things in production quickly at scale, and leverage the cloud of your choice. It gives you this abstraction layer where you're no longer locked in to a single cloud. If you remember years ago, we loved the idea of Java, right? Write once, run anywhere. Think about Kubernetes as write an application, deploy anywhere, and use the cloud of your choice, and you're no longer locked in. So it is virtualizing the cloud in an essence. So the biggest power for me is Kubernetes is a powerful technology that brings the right level of infrastructure and application goodness to the community.
So that's what, these are the various trends we have been hearing for years, and they're not going away. They have been accelerated, and you have talked in detail about them. So now that's the past and present. I'd like going into the future. So in the future, again, we are entering probably I'd say 100% cloud world. So the 2020s could be like the decade of the cloud. So what are the challenges that these enterprises will face, and what are the trends now, long-term trends that you see related to all this?
Yeah, so I think one thing is for sure, the trend is not being reversed where we're going to move away from the cloud. But what is the cloud? The cloud is no longer just the public clouds that we know about. Cloud is equal to the sovereign clouds that you may have in each of the regions. Cloud is at the edge. Cloud is in the data center. Cloud is in the host. So it's really a computing model more than a location. So I always say cloud is no longer about a location. You tend to think of cloud as one of the big hyperscalers. But the cloud is really a flexible, fungible resource that's available on demand. And your applications are going to run across the edge in the network, the telco edge, if you will, all the way back into your data center, your co-host facility, a sovereign cloud locally if you're in the government and some of the regulations out there, or in the public cloud. So we're starting to see cloud is becoming more an operating model. And the flexibility it offers is able to spin up capacity and have self-service access to it. So we're going to be in this world where we're going to assume that we'll always have access to capacity on the fly. The network latency is going down to 0 with 5G, et cetera. So you'll be able to reach data, et cetera. And so you're working a utility computing model where application demand can be met with the best resources available in the fly. And everything is available as a service. You have a URL, you have an endpoint. It's almost like when you use your browser and you type in the web address and a website pops up. You can start to think about business functionality being available as a service. So you're going to start to see APIs starting to come. So I think we're going to move from this world of traditional Kubernetes orchestrated containers to this idea of serverless. You often hear the word serverless, meaning you no longer have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. It dynamically gives you the right resources to operate, all the way to APIs and API services. So we're going to be in the world of composing capability, and developers are going to be composing functionality using business logic, open source libraries, and these services. And I view the world is going to be built around this dynamic infrastructure that needs to be observable at scale. Because one of our biggest challenges when something goes wrong now, how do you debug your application? The second big problem is, what's the security boundary of your application? In the old days, you used to lock yourself behind a firewall. And that was your house, right? You close the door, you put the firewall, you could protect yourself. But now your application is running with services running in public cloud, using some SaaS services. Some of the code is running on your retail branch. You have now a way to protect this. So you hear the idea of zero trust. So the application becomes your boundary versus the edge of your house, just like locking the door of your house. So you're going to start to see in this world, you don't have to worry about observability at scale. How do I know what happened in real time? I have no chance of recreating the problem. You're going to worry about zero trust. You're going to have to worry about application developers being able to have security built right in, so that when you put it in production, you know it's secure and safe. You want to have the ability to kind of set SLAs and have the infrastructure scale up and scale down using these dynamic technologies. That's the world we're moving to. It's about continuous delivery of new capability with strong, robust operating capability. So operations and day two operations in particular, I believe, are the next challenges that you will be dealing with.
What about the trends you see for the?
Yeah, so the big trends I see is increasingly the use of AI and AI ops to help drive control around these capabilities. So the top three trends I see right now is we're seeing application modernizations picking up steam. Second is we're starting to see AI and AI ops being applied in all aspects of our life, whether it's intelligence for business or intelligence for optimizing operations. I'm seeing security being what we call shift left all the way, meaning developers getting more and more control on how they drive this stuff. And the last is everything's becoming a service. And so you can start thinking about API security, API management becomes critical in terms of how you operate and run your business. Your brand of your business will depend on the services you offer and how easy you do the business with, because we're operating in a digital world. I don't know if you use DHL, I'm assuming in India, and you want to know your tracking. You punch in the tracking code, that's a service. Behind that, there may be a whole bunch of applications that are figuring out where the status of your package is. But for you, it's just a simple service. So we're going to be in this world of business services that become really mainstream in terms of you operate. And that's how I see the future operating and the trends around that.
Okay, finally, just if you could pick up one big idea in the cloud world in the 2020, just one big idea, what would it be?
I think the one big idea for me would be the world we're living in terms of where you're no longer tied to a single cloud, where you're able to use the best cloud for the best infrastructure and application. And so the idea of I'm no longer separating out what developers do. So imagine the world where developers don't have to worry about infrastructure. They don't have to worry about all the day two operations concern. And so the big idea is I, as a developer, get to write business code, describe what my application needs, and magic happens. Magic happens in the resource provisioning, whether it's databases, messaging, caching, all of that is automatically done for me. And when something needs to change, it dynamically alerts me. I can then look at exactly what's going on. In some cases, it makes the adjustments automatically for me. So the big idea is we're moving to a much more dynamic AI ops-driven world, where developers no longer have to worry about the operational capability. They can get to work on the things they want to work on, which is create amazing digital experiences, creating amazing applications, and making it really easy for them to run and operate at scale. No more having to worry about all the work it takes to get something in production, right? So code to production in seconds would be my vision for 2021.
Okay, so anyway, thank you for that detailed overview. I liked one that you said you can no longer lock yourself in the fort, and like it's everywhere. That sounds both exciting and scary. I mean,
But that is a new reality we deal with,
yeah.
no? Because if you really look at it, right? I always say, what's the edge of your enterprise anymore?
Right.
How are you going to lock up your enterprise? You no longer can do
can't.
firewalls and put locks in. So all the traditional security simply doesn't work. So if you haven't built the security into your application, if you're not able to see what's going with the health of your application, you haven't designed that, or you're not building an infrastructure, it's impossible to operate. And how do you respond to business where the business is changing and every industry is being disrupted?
Right.
And so for me, the idea is going to be, how do we make the typical developer just coming out of school, how do we get him productive? We can't have him understand all of this fancy technology that's changing all the time. So we got to make it easy for him or her, right, in this case, to build applications with ease and take away all this complexity, right? And so the cloud is not just about this infrastructure. I feel like cloud is like a kid in the candy store. You go to one of the AWS website and you have thousands of services.
Right.
But how do you make sense of those? Which one do you use? How do you design them? How do you use them? So I think the next act is going to be, how do you simplify? How do you accelerate? How do you make it easy to build great experiences without having to deal with all of this technology complexity we create? We've actually made it worse in some ways for the average developer, right? To get things done. So pretty exciting time. So all this power, how do you make it easy? How do you make it accessible? How do you make it consistent? Those are some of the challenges I think ahead of us.
Yeah, I know. As you said it's pretty exciting times in the cloud world, and you're at the center of it. So we look to hearing more from you in the future. So
anyway, we are very blessed as a company. We are the Switzerland of cloud.
Okay, that's a good.
I mean, if you think about it, right? VMware is, we sit and run in every cloud. In the last 2 decades, we were the leaders in virtualizing hardware. Right. I believe the next act for VMware is virtualizing these clouds and providing amazing development experiences that makes it easy. So being that virtualized infrastructure, being the multi-cloud vendor of choice, we get to sit above everything in some ways and glue all these pieces together and make it a reality. So pretty exciting time for the company. And I think VMworld started to present our vision and some of the technologies we have to offer. Everything from cloud infrastructure innovation, edge innovations. We did some great announcement with NVIDIA for AI, starting to bring the AI toolkits and making it accessible, all the way to some of my own products, where we announced a new marketplace service. We announced the ability to have a Tanzu application platform. We even created a free version for folks wanting to learn Kubernetes. I'm assuming many of your folks who wanted to get hands-on, just getting something easy and free that is fully featured, that they can start building these applications. So we're excited to have Tanzu Community Edition available for free for your users and your developers to start using. So a rich set of capability and a lot of hands-on labs and training that's now available. So in this world of digital, you don't have to go attend a classroom even. You can do a quick search, you can find a piece of code on GitHub or GitLab, download it, try something out, and I think that's the future. So I hope your listeners get to try some of our technology out as well. And see for themselves the power of this technology.
I'm sure they'll will. So anyway, thank you so much for your time. It was
Sunil, thank you for the opportunity, for giving me an opportunity to come and speak to you and your audience about all the exciting things in cloud.